Morning, cadets. Let us study the comprehension passage. The questions on comprehension passage are very important because in the UPSC examination, you will come across 3 to 4 passages and you have to attempt the questions on the comprehension passages. Now remember one thing, in the case of comprehension passages, you can score very well if you grasp the passage well, if you are able to comprehend this passage well. So in order to comprehend well, you can make use of some of the tricks. Read the questions first and then read the passage. When you read the questions at first, you will have a questioning attitude, and therefore you will have a better understanding of the passage. Don't worry about the words which you don't know the meanings. You need not worry about the difficult words. You can guess the meaning of that in the context. And there may be many words which may not be important as far as the answers of those questions are concerned. So therefore, you need not worry about each and every word's meanings. So let's first take up the first passage and we'll discuss the answers of the first passage. So when we are starting this first passage, at first we'll read the questions. So we'll read only the first question and then we'll read the passage. Which of the following statements best reflects the underlying tone of the passage? Remember, one question which may come, it may be related to tone of the passage, or it may be related to the main idea of the passage. So here you have to find out, or it can be the questions related to facts which are given there in the passage. So you have to remember about facts, main ideas, tone, and some of the questions may base down the inference of the entire passage. So the questions that may be related to facts, tone, main idea, or inference. So you have to infer. Okay. So let's see this question. So this question is on tone of the passage. So which statement reflects the underlying tone of the passage? So which statement reflects the tone of the passage? Literature and history are mutually exclusive. Literature and history are complementary to each other. The study of literature is meaningless without any knowledge of history. Literature and history are inseparably linked together in the classics and the Bible. So in order to answer this question, you have to read the entire passage. So remember, the question can be on tone of the passage. What is the what is the passage about? What does the passage deal with? And what does the passage want to convey? That is what is very important. So there are 4 statements which are given there. Literature and history mutually exclusive. Literature and history complementary. The study of literature is meaningless without knowledge of history. Literature and history are inseparably linked together in the classics and the Bible. So let's first read the passage. Literature and history are twin sisters, inseparable. In the days, so when you are reading it, try to understand it. In the days of our own grandfathers, And for many generations before them, the basis of education was the Greek and Roman classics for the educated and the Bible. In all, in the classical authors and in the Bible, history and literature were closely interwoven or interweaved, and it is that circumstance which made the old form of education so stimulating to the thought and imagination of our ancestors. Now, here literature and history are inseparably linked together in the classics and the Bible. It sounds, mm, yes, much more relevant, isn't it? So, the last sentence which is there, that sounds much more relevant. So, let's discuss this particular sentence now. In the classical authors and in the Bible, history and literature were closely interwoven, and it is that circumstance which made the old form of education so stimulating to the thought and imagination of our ancestors. To read the classical authors and to read the Bible was to read at once the history and the literature of the three greatest races of the ancient world. Once again, you read the literature and history are inseparably linked together in the classics and the Bible. It is again referring to that. No doubt the classics and the Bible were read in a manner we now consider uncritical, but they were read according to the best tenets of the time and formed a great humanistic education. Today, the study both of the classics and of the Bible has dwindled to small proportions. What has taken their place? To some extent, the vacuum has been filled by a more correct knowledge of history and a wider range of literature. But I fear that the greater part of it has been filled up with rubbish. I'm quite sure you have found the answer for this. And what is the answer for the first question? The first question, the right answer is D. Literature and history are inseparably linked together in the classics and the Bible. Since you have read this at first, very easily you can find the answer for the first question. So let's read the second question. And remember, once you read, and you can read remaining all questions and read second time the passage, and you'll be able to find the answers for all the questions. So let's go to the second question now. What is the second question? The author of the passage says that in the past, the basis of education for all people, irrespective of their intellectual caliber, was Greek and Roman classics, the Bible, a correct knowledge of history, a wider range of literature. The author of the above passage says that in the past, the basis of education for all people. So, what was the basis of the education? So, what was the basis of education? Where you will find this? Now, here you see what is given there in that particular passage. So, where will you find that? In the classical authors or in the Bible, history and literature were closely interwoven. But just before that, the basis of education was the Greek and Roman classics for the educated and the Bible for all. So, what is the answer for this second question? The Bible for all. So, what was the basis of education for all people, irrespective of the intellectual caliber? That was the Bible. Let's go to the third question. The author of the above passage says that the classics and the Bible were read by his ancestors. The author says that the classics and the Bible were read by his ancestors. Okay, let's see here what are the options there given to us. Methodically and with discretion, in a manner that broadened their view of life, with great emphasis on their literary values, without critical discrimination, but in the light of their humanistic culture. So, what is the answer there? Now, here, what you have to find out first, be sure that the classics and the Bible were read by the ancestors. So, By the classics and the Bible were read in a manner we now consider uncritical. So, but they were read according to the best tenets of the time. Uncritical here without critical discrimination. Yes, uncritical, but in the light of what? Were read in the manner which were uncritical, but they were read according to the best tenets of the time and formed a great humanistic education in the light of their humanistic culture. So, what is the option there? D is the right option. Where at the beginning, uncritical it is given here without critical discrimination, and here humanistic. What is given the education here in the light of their humanistic culture. So let's go to the fourth question now and fourth and fifth question of this passage. According to the author of the above passage, the old form of education based on the study of the classics and of the Bible has. Now you have to read that passage once again. If you read that passage once again, you'll be able to find the answer for this very easily. So what is the answer for the fourth question that we'll find out? So first we'll read the options given there. Succeeded in creating interest in history, laid the basis of human civilization, had a gradual decline in our time, been rejuvenated in the context of modern education. And fifth one, the author of the above passage fears that the greater part of the vacuum created by lack of interest in the classics and the Bible has been filled up by a richer sense of history, a wider range of literature, worthless ideas, a new philosophy of life. So, what is the fourth question? The old form of education based on the study of the classics and of the Bible has then the old form of education based on the study of the classics and the Bible. So here the old form of education has. So what it has, that is what is the question, and that you have to find out what. So what has happened, that is what you have to see. Whether succeeded in creating over the period what has happened, succeeded in creating interest or laid the basis of human civilization. So that is what over the period what has happened, that is what you have to find out, and there you will be able to find out over the period what has happened. So for that what you have to do, you have to read it again the passage, and you will be able to find what has happened. Today the study both of the classics and of the Bible has dwindled to small proportions. What has taken their place? So what it tells us, to some extent the vacuum has been filled by a correct knowledge of history and a wider range of literature. So over the period what has happened, it has dwindled. That word is a very, very important word. So that word, what does it mean? Over the period, there has been a gradual decline in our time. So there's been a gradual decline. And here, the next one, here, the author of the above passage fears that the greater part of the vacuum created by lack of interest in the classics and the Bible has been filled up by. Now here it is very clear in the last one, filled up with rubbish. And filled up with rubbish means what? Greater part it is filled up with rubbish means it's filled up with worthless ideas. So C is the right answer in the case of fourth as well as fifth. Which is the right answer? C is the right answer. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next passage, passage number 2. I hope you have understood now how to approach the passage. Just show, and you'll find in the UPSC examination very short passages. And let's try to answer the questions on the passage number 2. So let's go to the passage number 2. During his early days as editor of the popular magazine Saturday Evening Post, George Lorimer did much of the reading of unsolicited stories. This meant endless hours of sitting at the desk, poring over big stacks of manuscripts, trying to decide which way worthy of publication and which way not. Lorimer became an expert at making these dishes. One day he received a happy letter from a would-be writer who had a complaint. Last week you rejected my story, she wrote. I'm positive. you did not read it because as a test, I pasted together pages 14, 15, and 16. The manuscript came back with the pages still pasted. There's no question in my mind but that you are a sham and a disgrace to your profession. Lorimer's reply was succinct. Madam, at breakfast when I crack open an egg, I don't have to eat the whole egg to know it is bad. So let's go to question number 6. Lorimer did much reading of the stories. So you have to find out the answer here. If they were the solicited ones, when they appear to be bad, when they were from women writers, when they came unsolicited. So that is what you have to find out. The answers for the questions now. So at first we'll read the these questions and then we'll try to find out its a meaning there. So let's see the second question now here. Second, that is seventh question here. What is it? Lorimer was a good editor because his reply to the angry writer was polite. He apologized for rejecting the story without reading it. He could find the worth of a story with a little effort. He was prompt in writing letters. So those are the options given there. So first we'll discuss and then let's see eighth one. The lady wrote a happy letter because her story was rejected. Her story was rejected unread. Her story was rejected although it was good. Lorimer was biased in his decision. Lorimer's reply was irrelevant, rude, witty, funny. Lorimer read the stories because he enjoyed reading them in order to publish them, only to find fault with them in order to review them. So let's go to the question number 6 now. Lorimer did much reading of the stories. Now here, George Lorimer did much of the reading of unsolicited stories. So those stories which have been unsolicited stories which have been asked by somebody who has referred unsolicited stories. If they were the solicited ones, he did much reading of the story which were unsolicited stories when they appealed to be bad, when they came from women writers, when they came unsolicited, which were not referred by somebody or requested by somebody. So what does solicit mean? Solicit means ask for from someone. So when they came unsolicited, then he is to read those stories. So that is the answer. Very clear. You'll find in the second one only. Factual. Very clearly you can find out the answer there. Very easily. So let's go to the second. So at first you are right. Okay, let's go to the second question now. And remember, here the answers are there. So you can get 4 marks. So, but you have to be careful. Lorimer was a good editor because now what was the answer here for this question? His reply to the angry writer was polite. He apologized for rejecting the story, or he could find the worth of a story with a little effort. He was prompt in writing letters. So he could find the worth of a story with little effort only. This meant endless hours of sitting at the desk, poring over big stacks of manuscripts, trying to decide which way worthy. Lorimer became an expert at making these decisions. So he was very, very expert in that. He was a good editor because of what? He could find the worth of a story. One day, so he could find the worth of a story with what? Because he says at the end, at breakfast, when I crack open an egg, I don't have to eat the whole egg to know it is bad. So with little effort only, one could come. No. So C is the right answer here. Eighth one, the lady wrote a happy letter because why she wrote that letter? Her story was rejected. Her story was rejected unread. Right. Her story was rejected unread. He had not read the story. And she says, I'm positive you did not read it because as a test, I pasted together. So she tells about all that. And now let's move on to the next one. Now, what is now Lorimer's reply? Lorimer's reply. Now, Lorimer's reply was irrelevant, rude, witty, funny. So, how was it? Lorimer's reply was succinct. What is it? It's a very brief, concise, and it was quite witty. It was quite witty, right? So, he has used his intellect when he has given the reply there. And Lorimer read the stories. He read the story because what is the answer for that? You have to find out. Lorimer read the stories because he enjoyed reading them in order to publish. Why? Why was he reading them? He was reading them because he wanted to publish them. It is quite clear. Trying to decide which were worthy of publication. So in order to publish them, that is the right answer. So we have already seen these two comprehension passages we have discussed and some of the tricks to attempt the comprehension passages. Thank you. Goodbye.